With a noticeable lack of students registering to vote in the next general election, how important is the student vote to the Labour Party?
Well, I think there's two things there. There's the importance of students voting for the Labour Party, but there's also the problem of students not being on the electoral register or being on the electoral register and not voting. And I think it's really important for our democracy, for the legitimacy of our democracy, that everybody is on the register and therefore is entitled to vote. And we have got massive criticisms of what the Tory Lib Dem coalition of government has done, because the way they've done it means that there are now millions of people who should be eligible to vote and who are not going to be eligible to vote because they're not on the register. But there's going to be a big democracy day on the 5th of February where there's going to be massive focus on really everybody should vote, at least everybody should register to vote. So I think that's very important. I mean, they've made it more difficult, but I think it's really important for everybody to register to vote, particularly, young people. But the other thing is who people vote for. I mean, the other thing to say about registration is that if you are older, if you own your own home, if you are living in suburbs or a country area rather than in a city, you are likely to be on the electoral register. But if you are young, renting, black or minority ethnic, living in a city, you're much more likely not to be on the register. And that is a real inequality in our democracy. And obviously we want everybody to be voting Labour, but we definitely want young people to be voting Labour because we think that our democracy gets skewed. If only older people vote, then politics looks to and leans towards older people and doesn't look towards young people, and it needs to do that in order to build a future for obvious reasons. And obviously we feel that the Tory Lib Dem coalition has created a lot of difficulties for young people starting out into the world of work, but actually not managing to get their foot on the work ladder, not being able to find a home to live independently, having to live back with their parents when they should be living on. So we think there's a lot of things that this government have done wrong in relation to young people, so we want them to vote Labour so we can put it right.
How confident are you that Labour will win back both Norwich North and Norwich South when increasing numbers of people seem to be turning to smaller parties such as UKIP and the Greens?
Well, I think we've got two great candidates in Jessa Sarto and Clive Lewis, so I think both of those would make excellent MPs and really not only speak up for Norwich but bring a real contribution to the House of Commons. And I think that in a way it's important for people to remember that if you have coalitions, then you get a situation where, like with the Lib Dems, where they promised a whole load of things and then they said, we're in coalition so we're breaking all our promises. And if you look at a programme and you vote for that programme of a particular party, you want that programme to be delivered. And that's not going to happen if you vote UKIP or Green or indeed Lib Dem. But I think the other thing that people will bear in mind is there's only going to be one Prime Minister in number 10 Downing Street. And the reality is that is going to only be a Labour or a Tory Prime Minister. And I think that for as much as the Tories and the Lib Dems have been a very bad government between 2010 and now, I think they would be infinitely worse if they got in again, because we can see the health service is kind of heading downhill, and it would be even worse if there was another term of Tory Lib Dem government.
With our main local hospital in Norwich only seeing 84% of patients within the 4-hour target waiting time, what I'd like to know is what would Labour do to help the NHS to cope with the increase in demand we've seen over this winter? I
think that basically the increase in demand is absolutely incredible, and I think it's really unfair the way that the government ministers talk about pressures on the NHS. It's not pressures, it's actual patients. And there's been a massive increase in the number of patients going to accident emergency. I was just looking at the figures. For the last 4 years we were in government, there was a 60,000 increase in the number of patients going into accident emergency. In the first 4 years of this government, it's been a 600,000 increase in patients to accident emergencies, and that's because people find it difficult to get a GP appointment, they find the walk-in centres are closed, and above all, with elderly people, the squeeze on home care services means that they don't get the support they need in their own home and they end up in A&E, and then when they're admitted to hospital they can't be returned to their home with the support they need, and therefore the queues for lengthen. So I think, the Conservatives say it's our fault that here we are in 2015 and there's problems with the NHS. the reality is they've been running the NHS since 2010 and it's gone downhill. So we've got a proposal which is that there will be a time to care fund which would provide extra doctors, extra nurses and extra home care assistants as well to help people in their home. And also we would merge together the health service and social care services so that actually they work to support people in their own home rather than them ending up in hospital.
My second to last question is, how do you feel like the role of the Minister for Women Inequality has developed since you essentially spearheaded the role?
Well, I'm sad to say it hasn't developed. It's just kind of fizzled out. And I mean, has anybody heard of the Equality and Human Rights Commission since we were in government? It just seems to have gone under a blanket. And the point is that equality is not going to happen of its own volition. It has to be fought for, whether it's equality for people with disabilities, whether it's gay and lesbian people, whether it's on grounds of race and ethnicity, or women and men. You know, we have to fight for progress. It's not an equal country yet. And unless the minister is there, unless the Equality and Human Rights Commission's there to support all the grassroots desire for equality that there is in this country, it won't happen. And one of the things that I think's happened since this government got into power is the progress towards equality has completely stalled and the clock's beginning to turn back.
On that subject of women, you've obviously spoken very openly about your views on the Sun's page 3, which has obviously been quite a big topic at the minute. There's been a very recent debate between Chloe Goodman and Jermaine Greer and yourself. Having reflected on Chloe's views, has that changed your mind?
Well, the thing about The Sun is a national newspaper, and it's not about Chloe or any of the other young women who are posing for the newspaper that we're taking issue with. It's the editorial decision that this is news, and that in a newspaper the role of women is not what women are doing in all walks of life. You know, they report news about men, but when it comes to reporting women, they appear to be dressed only in their knickers. I mean, I think that actually women in the 21st century are more than just being young, being sexually attractive, and there to be, you know, leered at by men. That is not, if you imagine in 100 years' time, you look back at the newspapers and you think, what was the society like? Well, you think, oh, that's what the society was like, was it? Men doing all the important stuff and women posing in their knickers. And I just think it is not what we should expect for women in this day and age.
Harriet Harman, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for speaking with us. Thank you.